The next presentation is a duo. They're already here. They do know that time is of essence. And can we clap hands for the duo from the DBSA? It's Luyanda and Kanyisa.
Yes.
This is
Kanyisa,
and this is Luyanda.
Yes.
Over to you. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I will try and just cut to the chase. So just a brief overview of what the Green Fund is about. So basically, the main overall acting mandate of the Green Fund DBSA is that of supporting transactions to help transition into a lower carbon economy. So we've got specific focus areas where we support projects in terms of that transitioning. So I think our colleagues from the DFFE also are here. So just a brief background in terms of the Green Fund is that this was a fund that was previously under the control of the DFFE, but managed by the DBSA on behalf of the DFFE. Subsequent to that, the fund has been wholly transferred into the DBSA, and now follows the processes of the DBSA in terms of the investment process. So that's just a bit about what we are. I'll just get into, within the DBSA, there's quite a few funds that are focused on climate finance. So we are part of the climate finance cluster. So if you are interested into further discussions into those funds, we can talk on the side. Because I'm conscious of our time, I want us to talk specifically about the Green Fund and what we do and what how we can help finance projects that are in the waste management space, which is what I understand is the focus for this platform today. So like I said, we've got sister funds that are also focused on climate finance initiatives within the DBSA space. We are in the Green Fund, and our fund, I think, importantly, we only focus in the South African space, whereas our other colleagues are able to look at initiatives even outside South Africa. DBSA has a very strong SADC focus, so those funds tend to typically play in those regions. So specifically then getting into the Green Fund, what we are about. So like I said, the main purpose is for us to help transition South Africa into a lower carbon economy in order to meet the net zero goal, 2050 goal that I think colleagues here would all know about. So we are part of what the government is then doing towards that in terms of supporting green initiatives in the country. So ours is to promote innovative and high impact green programs. And I will talk a bit about what we mean by innovative. We also support projects that reinforce climate policy objectives, supporting projects that build in evidence for the expansion of a green economy in the country. And we also have a strong focus on additionality. So where we fund, we want to attract, at least prepare projects that they're attractive enough to the capital market, the larger capital market, that is the bank and other DFIs. So we want to be the sweetener in projects where, for example, a project is high risk and may not traditionally be financeable by a banking institution. So we are those ones who take the first step and then attract other people to come and fund. So that is a main principle for funding for us. We don't want to do it alone. We don't want to crowd out financiers. We want everybody to come in. So we bring in the concessional funding in order to try and lower the cost of funding to make projects viable. So that's the one way we do it. So we've got specific focus areas, like I said, in terms of where we look at, because the green economy is huge. There's a lot of initiatives, right? And one has to focus. So what we then do, these are our focus areas. We are interested in the energy generation and storage. And I will distinguish a bit between what the greater DBSA is doing, because there is also a bigger program, especially around energy generations in terms of the IPP projects. And that is not what we're necessarily looking at here. We are looking at projects that are lower than the 10 megawatts. Yeah, so we finance those guys who are private, who've got private offtakes, who are producing up to 10 megawatts in terms of renewable energy. So we're also interested in storage technologies. Particularly hydrogen technologies, we are interested in those. Biogas technologies, and this is where the waste, for example, part of it would come in, where you're producing energy from waste. We've had quite a few applications for those kind of things. Even our existing portfolio, which we which comes from the older dispensation, has some of these bio material to energy, organic materials to energy. So we do look at those things. That is one of the focus areas that we have. We also have waste management, even if it's not having to do with doing or producing energy, projects that are geared towards managing of waste. For example, we're particularly interested in projects that are diverting waste from landfills, because we know that that's a big problem that South Africa is facing. Our landfills are being filled up and there is no more space. So we've received creative initiatives around the diversion of waste from landfills. We are particularly interested in that kind of thing. We are also looking into the water sector. And I think interesting things we're receiving there, for example, is the acid mine drainage issue with the mines. And we know how that destroys aquatic systems and whatnot. So, we've received creative solutions in terms of recycling that water to potable standard and potentially selling it back to the mines or to the municipality. So those are the kind of things we are wanting to see when we're saying innovative projects that are trying to deal with some of the issues that we have. We are also mandated in terms of greening the transport sector. So technologies, for example, like hydrogen-powered cars, or solutions for electric vehicles. We've received applications for that. As we know that, one of the impediments for the development of the EV industry in South Africa is around the charging infrastructure. So we receive guys who are bringing creative solutions in terms of how to package EV solutions, including the infrastructure, which is currently the problem, because nobody wants to invest in the infrastructure, and somebody needs to do it, because that's how you're going to get the industry to take off. So we've received applications around that. So that's the kind of spectrum in terms of the kind of focus areas that the fund does look at. But obviously then the underlying almost themes that have to be present, we look at. Obviously, there has to be evidence for transitioning in all of those projects. There has to be an evidence for climate benefits. We are also interested in transformation. So we do consider transformation in the projects that we do look at in terms of Black economic transformation. We are also particularly focused or interested in projects that include youth. I'm quite excited, for example, with what we've just been shown, for example, by the DFFE in terms of empowering youth. So those are the kind of things or elements we want to see in the projects that we do support. In terms of our funding instruments, we have a suite of funding instruments which we use strategically to obviously promote some of the objectives we want. So one of them, for example, is the grants. And when people hear grants, you get all sorts of applications because people think it's free money. We are very strategic about the way we use grants. So for instance, we typically use grants in the project development phase because we participate all the way from feasibility study all the way to a ready transaction that's ready to be funded. So when people are still wanting to do studies, we also participate there. So that's where we typically will participate in the grant type of funding. But even then, when we support projects like that, the project does need to demonstrate very high likelihood for it to graduate, for example, to bankable feasibility and ultimately to being funded. Even by the Green Fund, because obviously we don't want to develop projects for other people, because then we're giving away free money for other people to bypass the risk. So in terms of the grant funding, it's not a free for all. I just want to say that we're very strategic about the type of early projects we want to support by grant funding. So we have non-recoverable as well as recoverable grants. We also do debt, and typically you'll see this in transactions that are ready, that are post the development stage, where it's now funded by a DBSA and other parties. And so, like I said, we use typically concessionary loans. So you'll typically see us, for example, doing sub loans or loans at sub-rated prices in efforts to then attract other funders. Because what we want to see in a project is, if, for example, it's a 5 million project, we'll put in 2 million at concessionary funds, and then the other people must come to support the rest of the 3 million. So what we want to do is to ensure that we are attracting capital into those projects instead of trying to fund those things in completion, because obviously we also have limited funds, and there are a lot of high risk projects that need to be catalyzed, because at the very core of what we're doing is to try and catalyze projects, industries that would not take off ordinarily without, for example, support of the Green Fund. And we know that the green space in South Africa is still very nascent, and you're getting projects that are regarded as high risk, and that's why we then participate like that. So like I said, we'll have MES, whatever instrument we think works for the cash flows. Obviously, we have a look at what the requirement is for the business and what the cash flow profile and what will work better for the business. So that's the kind of funding instruments we have. Our funding ticket is we do up to 70 million. From 10 million is the minimum ticket size for us. Up to 70 million. With a bit of flexibility around these limits, depending, again, on how strategic we think that project is. For instance, we could go for an 8.5 million project if it is something that is very, key to what or very strategic to what we're wanting to achieve. But generally, those are the limits. We do up to 10 years in terms of our funding for our instruments. And in terms of the investment criteria, or at least the things that we do want to see in the projects that we do support, clear environmental benefits. Obviously, we're the Green Fund. The mandate is to transition into a lower carbon economy, and therefore the projects must have clear. Oh, sorry, because I keep bumping it. Am I over the time? 3 minutes. I'm almost done. So we are. Obviously, projects that deliver public goods and services, we ideally want to see projects that have that. Transformation objectives, I've mentioned this. Development of the local labor market, we want to see job creation in the projects that we do want to support. Everyone understands what the unemployment situation in South Africa is. Socio-economic development aspects, and I told you about the additionality aspect that we want to attract funds outside ourselves. So we put in at least we take the first step, and then you then use that as leverage to raise money elsewhere. But additionality is a key thing for us. We will not participate in a project alone. Risk sharing, which is also linked to the aspect of additionality. We do want to spread the risk. Because that makes sense financially, and obviously because we also have limited funds to try and catalyze as to a large extent as possible. There are a lot of highly exciting, innovative projects that we see across the country that we would like to have reached. So we want to do that. And finally, we do want to see sponsor commitment in the projects that we do fund. Even for instance, in cases where we are doing grant funding, we still do want the sponsors to show some commitment so that our interests are aligned. It's easy to get a 20 million grant, and if it's not on any of your money, it's easy to not care too much about what happens. So that is the Green Fund. Yanda, is there any other aspects?
Just contact details and then also how to apply.
Okay. Yeah. So the Green Fund is a fairly small team. We're a 3-man team. This is my principal, Luyanda, and there's 2 other senior associates, which is myself and another colleague who's not here. So in terms of let me see. I think I've got our details on the last slide. So you can reach out to any of us. Luyanda is obviously the principal. He mainly manages, outside contacts, but reaching out to any one of us is going to land you at the same place anyway. So those are our contact details if you're interested. In terms of the funding documents that you need when you do apply, basically we don't have an application form. So what you do is that you will send an email to either one of these emails in your comprehensive business plan, your cash flow projections, then obviously your company documents, your BEE certificate if you've got one, and that's that. Yeah, so that's we take it from there. And then if there's any additional things that we need from that, we will say, but basically that's the application process.